Kia koto, I am the Casual Kiwi, and this is Silent's updated Condemned Counter Fairies. Now, this deck I have been battling against in the Gauntlet, and it took quite a lot out of me getting to this point. It was a Pyrrhic victory. I lost 2 of my decks, totally Time Lords and Time Lock, to this strategy. So you might ask, Kiwi, why? Why is a deck like Counter Fairies giving you so much trouble? Well, part of the reason there, you'll see, is under the hood. This deck has a lot more going on than you might expect from your average Counter Fairy profile. So without further ado, let's jump into the profile. First off, Silent is running 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis. So far, so standard. Now, a lot of Counter Fairy players do like this at 3. I personally feel because we've got Condemned Witch, we can play it at 2, but having that extra draw power, seeing in your hand, can be very important. So I can see why Silent would have chosen to run it at 3. We're also running 3 copies of Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. Now, this one can be a win condition. We're not running any of the Parshaths. Basically, this gets bigger and bigger as you build up advantage, and you're able to recycle your counter traps if Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field. So you can set up some pretty nasty loops with Negate Attack and Drastic Drop Off. We didn't see a lot of it in the Gauntlet, but every time this comes out, I have to think, hold up, Silent could be in a position where she could really turn this around. So this was a card to look out for. We're then running, as we continue the monster lineup, 2 copies of Guiding Ariadne and 1 copy of Meliel, Sage of the Sky. Basically, Guiding Artemis is mostly used for its pendulum effect, which allows you not to pay costs for counter traps. This came up a couple of times and very much helped Silent keep in a position where she could interact and counteract my plays, even when her life points were really low. And in terms of Meliel, this can be a great comeback card as well, because every time a counter trap is activated, you gain 1,000 life points, and if Sage in the Sky is on the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field, then you are able to destroy 1 card your opponent controls. So being able to tutor this out with Condemned Witch can be very helpful. So this is the main line of your standard counter fairies. Now onto the supporting monsters. So we have 3 copies of Condemned Witch. Now this card is fantastic in the deck and very much made its presence felt throughout the Gauntlet. Basically, when you normal summon this card, you can search a forbidden quick play spell, which we'll talk about later, and you can also tribute this card off during your opponent's turn to summon a level 4 light fairy, which means that it has synergy with all your other counter fairies, basically acting as 3 additional copies of whatever counter fairy you need. It also is a dark monster, which means that Silent is able to play 1 copy of Darkest Diabolos, Lord of the Lair. This is very much run instead of perhaps a main deck Parshath, and being unable to be targeted, a 3k body. When you've got this plus a lineup of traps going on, it can be very deadly. And so it's definitely something to watch out, and we did see Silent bring this out during the Gauntlet. So that's it for the monsters. Now moving on to these spells. So first off, to go with our Condemned Witches, we run 1 copy of Forbidden Droplet. This is going to be a really hard card to destroy, and not very long to go now, really. This is probably the most expensive card that Silent and I own. It's definitely up there. Actually, it is probably the most expensive card we own. It allows you to halve a monster's attack points and negate their effects. This card is potentially devastating against Time Lords. There's 2 real ways that you want to deal with Time Lords. One way is to stop them ever being summoned, for example, blocking up a monster zone, because we can't normal summon them if we've got something else on the field. The other way is to just straight up negate all of their effects. So this card turned the tide a lot of times and very much earned its keep in this deck. It is one hell of a formidable card to come up against, especially under such circumstances. We then run 3 copies of the Sanctum of Parshath. This prevents the targeting of Silent's back row of her counter traps. This is actually really useful in the Trickstar matchup. I really had to keep this in mind and deal with it before I could really look at targeting the back row. Just provides that extra bit of protection as well as a slight attack boost, which can be good with your relatively low attack counter fairies. We also run 1 copy of the Sanctuary in the Sky, the regular form, just as basically another name, another way to have Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. All 3 of these count as the Sanctuary in the Sky on the field. We then run 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. This card is very much probably the second most expensive card behind Forbidden Droplet in the deck, and we play 3 of it. It's really good, and you'll see in the extra deck that Silent runs a lot of monsters in there at 3 ofs, basically to get around this card's effect of banishing in order to draw 2. Really strong draw card, and it synergizes with Pot of Duality, in that it doesn't prevent Pot of Duality being used. Something it doesn't synergize with, but is too powerful not to include, especially in a non-ties build, is Card of Demise. Really great tempo changer, a good additional draw when you need it, can get you out of sticky situations. Yeah, had to be at 1 because this is an updated deck profile, but still really strong. So that's it for the spells. On to the trap lineup. Gosh, it's hot in here. I wish that these shattered windows around the place would ventilate more. Surely they should. Jeepers. Okay. Heat's ever present around here. Okay. 3 copies of Negate Attack. Very much a good use in counter fairies, helps you survive an extra turn, can get you some advantage combined with the counter fairies. Underrated sometimes. I think it's really strong, especially when combined with Drastic Drop Off. You can even activate this in the draw phase. Basically, this combined with Negate Attack can set up a very powerful loop, and again helps you with the card advantage, because, you know, especially if you've got Bountiful Artemis on the field or Minerva, you're gaining 1 back as well as losing your opponent something important. Finally, we run the full Solemn package. So we've got 3 copies of Solemn Warning, 3 copies of Solemn Strike, and 3 copies of Solemn Judgement. In the original profile, I was happy to just be able to run, you know, a copy of Judgment and a copy of Warning, but here we have all of them, and they are super powerful. Definitely, you know, if there's something that can be negated, one of these Solemns will deal with it. They're all powerful in their own right, and it's one of the best reasons to play counter fairies is to have access to all of that negation, and oftentimes you can even avoid having to pay any cost for it. So that's it for the main deck. On to the extra deck. First up, we have 3 copies of Dark Rebellion XYZ Dragon. Very much an Extrav friendly alternative to the Utopia package. Didn't see too much of it in the Gauntlet, but it is still very much something to watch out for. So then we run 3 copies of Time Thief Redoer. Again, very powerful disruptive option. And I had some trouble with this card with Metasheet 420 prior to the Gauntlet. It's really obvious that he was just an agent at that point. being used to find out more information on what I was playing and to rattle me. I think there's no surprise there that he was playing Shadows. I think that was definitely, you know, a deliberate choice on the part of his master. I do hope his soul is returned to him, but I don't know, I'm not holding out much hope. If I do make it out of here, I'll have to pay him a visit and see if I can make a difference there. But anyway, so that's Time Thief Redoer. Then we have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. You didn't see Super Poly in the main deck. It is confirmed for the side deck. That's very important. It makes me wonder, especially if we're going up against a Morphage Lair after this, is Super Poly still going to be mained in that deck, or is it going to be sideboarded for something else that's going to cause me trouble? But it's definitely out there and it's something to worry about. And Super Poly is going to be in the mix. We then have the Knightmare package, Phoenix, Cerberus, and the big boy Unicorn, just general good removal. And then we have some one-offs. We have Castell, the Sky Blasting Musketeer, again a somewhat ironic choice that I think caused me a lot of trouble. The Condemned Dark Lord, again this is a card that I think we'll be seeing a lot more of. It's definitely something to watch out for. It can be very powerful in the right deck. And then we have one copy of the first Dark Lords. Again, this, along with the dice, along with just some of these reminders, it's just a way of hammering it home that the long and short of it is that at the end of this gauntlet I create a monster, and it's not silent. It's not silent. You know, this deck is much more about how I am condemned, and I have no doubt that silent is going to make this elimination, destroying this deck, as painful as possible for me. It is not going to be a pleasant time. So that is it for Condemned Counter Fairies. I hope this profile has been interesting insight into what I've been up against. Probably one of the most expensive decks in the entire gauntlet, and one of the most challenging, at least for me anyway. It's really made me confront myself, and there's a lot of silence determination in this deck, and I think in that last match you could see that really, even if I was going to win, she wasn't going to give me the satisfaction of it being that clear cut. So that is Condemned Counter Fairies. You know, without further ado, I will say ngā mihi, good night.